controversial religious relic in the world, the Shroud of Turin, is facing major scrutiny from a new 3D finding published in the academic journal Archaeometry.
For generations, one ancient relic has continued to divide opinions and spark endless fascination around the world. To some, it is a sacred object connected to one of history's most powerful stories. To others, it remains a mystery surrounded by questions that science has struggled to answer. But now, a new investigation has uncovered something hidden within this famous cloth that researchers never expected to find. As experts begin examining these surprising clues, one question suddenly rises above all others. What exactly was discovered, and could it change the mystery forever? DNA secrets in the sacred cloth. For hundreds of years, a mysterious cloth believed by many people to have once wrapped the body of Jesus has captured attention across the world. It has been studied, debated, and carefully protected, yet it still raises more questions than answers. Some see it as a sacred relic tied to deep faith, while others view it as an object waiting for a scientific explanation. Recently, new scientific work has brought fresh attention to this ancient fabric. An international group of researchers revisited samples collected in 1978, decades earlier. Using modern tools unavailable at the time, they began to examine the cloth in a completely new way, focusing not only on what can be seen with the naked eye, but also on what is hidden at the microscopic level. What they found surprised even the researchers themselves. Instead of obvious traces such as food particles, stains, or plant materials, they discovered extremely small fragments of genetic material trapped in dust and fibers attached to the cloth. These tiny DNA traces had remained undetected for years, quietly preserved within the fabric. With advanced laboratory technology, scientists were able to study these microscopic genetic clues in greater detail than ever before. The findings suggested that the cloth had been exposed to many different sources over time, leaving behind a complex mixture of biological signatures. Each fragment offered a small clue about the history of contact with the fabric. This discovery does not provide final answers, but it opens a new door for research. It shows how modern science can revisit old samples and reveal information that was once impossible to detect. As technology continues to improve, researchers hope that even more secrets hidden within the cloth may eventually come to light. Beyond the immediate findings, the study highlights how much information can still be hidden in ancient materials stored for decades without modern testing. Researchers believe that many historical artifacts around the world may contain similar microscopic clues waiting to be discovered. By applying newer DNA sequencing techniques, scientists can now extract and analyze genetic material that was once considered too degraded to study. This does not necessarily change the historical debate surrounding the cloth, but it does expand scientific understanding of how biological traces survive over long periods. The team also emphasized that contamination from handling, storage, and environmental exposure must be carefully considered when interpreting results. Even so, the presence of diverse DNA fragments suggests a long and complex history of contact. Future studies may compare these findings with relics to build a clearer picture of how materials interact with human environments over centuries. Scientists have revealed the discovery of tiny traces of DNA buried in the dust and fibers attached to the cloth believed by many to have wrapped Jesus. But what do these DNA findings actually suggest upon investigation? And what could they mean for the history of the cloth itself? Now, let's uncover the traces that are rewriting the story of the sacred cloth. The unexpected DNA signals. As researchers examined the samples more closely, they came across results that no one had expected. Among all the plant DNA fragments identified, the strongest signal came from carrots. Surprisingly, carrot-related genetic traces made up nearly one-third of all the plant material that was detected. This was not something the scientists had been looking for, and it immediately caught their attention. Even more intriguing was what the genetic details suggested. The carrot DNA did not seem to come from wild plants growing freely in nature. Instead, it appeared to be closer to types of carrots that are grown and cultivated by humans. This raised new questions about how such material ended up on the ancient cloth and what kind of environments it may have been exposed to over time. The analysis did not stop there. Other plant traces were also found, adding more complexity to the results. Bread wheat showed a strong presence in the samples, suggesting that grains were also part of the biological material preserved in the cloth. Alongside this, scientists identified genetic fragments linked to several other grains, including rye, durum wheat, einkorn wheat, and even maize. Each of these findings added another layer of mystery. The combination of different plant DNA signals suggested that the cloth had come into contact with a wide variety of plant-based materials at different points in its long history. Some may have been introduced through handling, storage, or environmental exposure, while others might reflect older origins that are still not fully understood. What began as a simple and routine scientific examination soon turned into something far more complex. Instead of providing clear answers, the results opened the door to even more questions. Researchers now find themselves trying to understand how and why such a diverse mix of plant DNA ended up in the same ancient fabric. The deeper they look, the more the mystery seems to grow. Because of these unexpected results, scientists are now carefully rechecking their methods and comparing findings with other ancient textiles. They want to know whether the plant DNA truly reflects the cloth's long history, or if it was introduced later through contact, dust, or human handling. Some researchers believe that modern contamination cannot be ruled out, while others think the patterns may still carry meaningful clues. Either way, the discovery has renewed interest in the cloth and encouraged further testing. With every new layer of analysis, researchers hope to move closer to understanding what these tiny genetic traces are really telling us. Upon investigation, the strongest plant DNA discovered on the cloth came from carrots. But what does the presence of this plant, along with others, suggest about the history surrounding the cloth? Could it be that the cloth came into contact with different plant traces across many centuries? Now, let's unravel how more plant traces create a greater mystery. A tapestry of time in DNA. The surprises kept coming as researchers went deeper into the tiny DNA hidden in the cloth. More unexpected plant traces began to show up, each one adding to the confusion. The results became increasingly complex, like a large puzzle with many scattered pieces that do not easily fit together or form a clear picture. Among the discoveries were DNA traces linked to a wide range of familiar plants. Scientists identified signals from peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, melons, and cucumbers. These are all plants that are widely known today and commonly used in everyday meals across many parts of the world. Their presence in such an ancient fabric was not something anyone had predicted. Even more surprising was the strong signal of peanuts. This stood out clearly in the data and drew extra attention from the researchers. Peanuts are not just another plant trace. They are often tied to specific regions and farming histories. Finding such a strong presence added another layer of confusion to an already complex set of results. But the list did not stop there. Smaller and weaker traces also appeared in the samples, pointing to grasses, oats, and clovers. While these signals were less dominant, they still contributed to the growing variety of plant life detected within the cloth. Each new trace added another small piece to the unfolding story. As all these findings were put together, a strange and unexpected picture began to form. Instead of showing a simple or single origin, the cloth seemed to carry a wide mixture of biological material. This suggested that it had likely come into contact with many different environments, people, and natural sources over a very long period of time. The variety of plant DNA made it difficult for scientists to draw a single clear conclusion. Rather than reflecting one specific moment in history, the cloth now appeared to hold traces of countless encounters. It may have been handled, stored, displayed, or passed through many places across centuries, each leaving behind a tiny biological mark. What started as a focused scientific study slowly turned into something much broader. The cloth no longer looked like a simple relic frozen in time, but rather like an object that had traveled through history, gathering small fragments of the world around it. Researchers now believe that every tiny DNA signal might represent a different chapter in the cloth's long and complicated journey. And, with each discovery, the mystery only grows deeper, leaving scientists with even more questions than answers about what this ancient fabric has truly experienced over time. Aside from carrots, scientists also discovered traces of other plants on the cloth. But could these plant traces have been present since the very beginning of the cloth? Or were they attached much later, over the course of many years? And what might have caused this contact in the first place? Let's find out. The Colombian exchange clue. Some findings added a surprising twist to the study. While examining tiny plant DNA trapped in the cloth, scientists noticed something unusual. They found traces of plants like tomatoes, maize, and peanuts. At first, these may seem normal, but they are not simple discoveries. These plants have a special history tied to human travel and trade, which changes how the results are understood and raises new questions about how the cloth gathered such traces over time. These crops did not originally exist in Europe or the Middle East. Instead, they came from the Americas and only began to spread to other parts of the world after 1492, following what historians call the Colombian exchange. This was a major period in history when plants, animals, and goods were shared between the New and Old worlds after long-distance sea travel began connecting distant continents. Because of this timeline, the presence of tomato, maize, and peanut DNA in the cloth raises important questions. It suggests that at least some of these biological traces could not have been part of the cloth during its earliest claimed period. Instead, they likely appeared much later in history. However, this discovery does not provide a simple or final answer about the cloth's authenticity. Scientists are careful to point out that DNA traces can be introduced in many different ways. Over hundreds of years, an object can be handled, moved, displayed, or stored in many places, each time picking up tiny biological materials from the environment and from human contact. What the findings do suggest is that the cloth has not remained untouched through time. Instead, it may have experienced long periods of exposure to different people, environments, and cultural settings. Each of these encounters could have left behind small biological traces that slowly built up over centuries. This makes the cloth story even more complicated and fascinating. Instead of being linked to just one moment in history, it now seems like an object that has moved through many hands and many places over time. With each passing era, it appears to have gathered small traces of evidence, like layers of memory. Each layer adds a small clue, but the full story of its journey is still unclear and deeply mysterious. For researchers, this is both exciting and challenging. The presence of post-1492 plants does not solve the mystery, but it does reshape how the cloth is viewed. It highlights the possibility that what scientists are studying today may not reflect only its earliest origins, but also a long and complicated history of human contact stretching across many generations. The presence of various plant DNAs on the cloth suggests that these traces may not have been part of it from the very beginning. But can these findings be used to determine the actual age of the cloth? Or would that require another study? And how reliable could any method be to determine how old the cloth truly is? Let's find out. The age debate surrounding the shroud. After these discoveries, one big question came up. Can this finally reveal the true age of the cloth? As excitement grew, scientists quickly made things clear. Even though DNA analysis is highly advanced, it cannot directly tell how old an object is. Genetic traces only show what living things once touched or were near the cloth. They do not contain any built-in time marker, meaning they can hint at contact history, but not give an exact date or age. Because of this, scientists looked back at earlier scientific attempts to date the cloth. One of the most well-known tests was radiocarbon dating, carried out in 1988. That study analyzed small samples of the material and concluded that the cloth most likely originated sometime between 1260 and 1390 AD. This result placed its creation in the medieval period, long after the time of Jesus, and it led many researchers to believe it was not as ancient as some traditions suggest. However, the story does not end there. In more recent years, new scientific methods have been developed that allow researchers to examine materials in different ways. One such approach is wide-angle X-ray scattering, a technique that studies the structure of fibers at a very detailed level. In 2024, a study using this method produced results that surprised many people in the scientific community. According to that analysis, the structural patterns found in the cloth were consistent with something far older, possibly around 2,000 years old. This age range would place the cloth closer to the time of early Christianity and would align more closely with the traditional belief that it is connected to the burial of Jesus. This sharp difference between scientific methods has added even more tension to an already complex debate. On one side, radiocarbon dating suggests a medieval origin. On the other hand, newer structural analysis points toward a much older history. Both methods are based on science, yet they lead to very different conclusions. Researchers emphasize that no single test can be treated as the final answer. Each method looks at the cloth in a different way and comes with its own limits and uncertainties. Factors like contamination, environmental exposure, and centuries of handling may also affect results. For now, the question of the cloth's true age remains open. Instead of bringing a conclusion, the discoveries have deepened the mystery. The cloth continues to sit at the center of a scientific and historical puzzle, where every answer seems to lead to even more questions about its real origin and long journey through time. Beyond failing to determine the exact age of the cloth, what ripple effects could this DNA discovery have on its overall story? Could it open the door to entirely new research? Or has everything that can be learned about the cloth already been uncovered? And is it possible that more hidden details are still waiting to be discovered? Let's uncover the astonishing details. An unfinished mystery across centuries. Rather than bringing the debate to an end, this discovery seems to have opened an entirely fresh chapter in the long and complicated story of the cloth. Instead of giving scientists and historians a final answer, it has pushed the mystery even further, inviting more questions than before. Scientists explain that the latest findings do not stand alone. Instead, they add to a growing body of research that looks at how the cloth may have survived for so many centuries without falling apart completely. The tiny traces of DNA found within it are seen as small clues about its long journey through time. Each layer of dust, fibers, and genetic material tells a slightly different part of the story. Over time, the cloth appears to have been exposed to many environments, from storage spaces to human hands, and possibly even different climates and locations. These repeated contacts may have slowly added biological signatures that modern science is only now able to detect. For researchers, this means the cloth should not be viewed as a single moment frozen in history, but rather as an object that has moved through many hands and many generations. Every new test seems to reveal another hidden layer, like peeling back pages of a very old and unfinished book. At the same time, scientists also warn that these genetic traces cannot be treated as direct proof of origin or authenticity. DNA can be carried by dust, air, handling, and storage, meaning that some signals may come from later contact rather than the earliest history of the cloth. Even so, the discovery has changed how researchers think about the cloth. Instead of closing the case, it has made it wider and more complex, drawing in ideas from history, science, and archaeology. What was once seen as a simple question now feels like a deep and ongoing puzzle. In the end, the latest DNA study does not give a final answer, but it adds more depth to an already fascinating mystery. And for many researchers and observers, that may be even more important than solving it too quickly. Researchers also point out that modern technology is still improving, and future tools may be able to separate older biological signals from newer ones more clearly. This could help scientists understand which traces belong to early history and which were added later. For now, however, much of the story remains open, leaving room for more study and debate. Some experts believe that the value of these findings is not only in what they prove, but also in how they change the way people think about ancient objects. Instead of seeing them as fixed items, they are now seen as living records of human contact, movement, and history across time. This shift in thinking may be one of the most important outcomes of the study itself, even if the mystery remains unsolved. Ultimately, the cloth continues to challenge scientists, historians, and believers with its enduring, evolving mystery today. So, what do you think about the scientists' discovery related to the cloth? Could there still be more secrets left to uncover? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.